President Trump told Americans he'd cut costs for consumers, even vowing on the campaign trail to slash prices on day one. But for the last 43 days he's been in office, we've watched inflation rise and the cost of eggs skyrocket. Even the stock market reacting, taking a massive tumble as the U.S. ushered in Trump's blanket tariffs against our top trading partners, Canada and Mexico. Now, these price increases could cost the average American family up to $2,000 a year. This means all of us will be paying more for groceries like veggies and beef and products like car parts and kids' toys. Now, farmers across the nation are expecting to take the brunt of these tariffs. Here's what one soybean farmer told me.
We've been here before. We have some recent history with what the retaliation from China and what that resulted in 2018. And you mentioned the numbers there, a total loss to U.S. agriculture of $27 billion. And if we can learn from history, we could expect that the same we would see that similar or same reaction from China again. And then if you layer on tariffs and trade wars with both Mexico and Canada, even a greater impact on U.S. producers and U.S. farmers.
Joining me now, a place where there's a lot of very important farmers, Republican Senator Eric Schmitt of Missouri. Sir, good to see you. Let's get right into it, shall we? Agriculture, it's your number one industry. Corn and soybeans are your top crops. What do you say to your farmers?
Well, I think the American people, including American farmers, are tired of getting ripped off by so many countries across the world where we don't have access to their markets. And so President Trump has taken a stand here. In Canada, by the way, our trade deficit with Canada ballooned over 200+% during Joe Biden's 4 years. And things got super expensive then. So I think, taking into account the two, main goals here. One is to equalize this trade imbalance that we have with our so-called friends. But then also to stop the fentanyl that's flowing across our northern border. That number continues to increase month by month. And so President Trump, I think, is taking those things on. I also think it's important, Kira, to put this into context. When tariffs were slapped on China in President Trump's first term, we saw revenues increase from those tariffs $200+ billion, and prices didn't go up. In fact, inflation was under control because we had an energy policy that accounted for, basically making things less expensive. So when you put it in its full context of an energy policy that allows us to be energy dominant again and controlling spending, government spending, that will bring prices down. All
right, well, to put things in perspective, less than 1% of fentanyl comes in from Canada. So let's get back to just
that number's
farmers.
Growing. That number is growing, Kira. There's no question about that, especially as we start.
Actually, Justin Trudeau said today that it's not growing.
Well, he's wrong. He's wrong, because it is growing, because we're starting to seal it off, taking on the cartels at our southern border. The northern border is porous. And you've had actually people on the terrorist watch list come across that northern border. So they can do a whole lot more than they're doing right now, that's for sure.
All right, immigration, clearly we've got to talk about, but let's get back to prices for a second here. President Trump telling farmers via Truth Social to have fun with these tariffs. I mean, Senator, that's a bit flip. Is that really the right tone for the moment? I mean, you deal with these farmers in your state on a regular basis. You hear from your constituents. Is this the right tone?
Well, listen, I can tell you, because I'm from Missouri, Missouri's bright red, and rural America voted for President Trump because he's standing up for them. You can't even sell a car in Europe effectively, right? You've got a lot of these barriers that have been put in place by countries who are our friends, but take full advantage. They want access to our markets, but it's an unfair imbalance when you try to penetrate their markets with our goods. So President Trump is entering into a game here of a negotiation to try to bring this thing down, to bring costs down, and also to be treated fairly. So the farmers that I represent in Missouri are tired, like I said, like most Americans, of getting ripped off by so many countries around the world.
Well, let's talk about China. China's gets a tremendous amount of soybeans from us. So farmers need to be able to sell to foreign countries.
Yeah, I don't think you're probably arguing that we have access to Chinese markets, are you? In a real way? That's not your argument, because they're dumping products across, they're dumping steel, they're bypassing a lot of the tariffs that are put in place by going through Mexico. We finally have a president who's serious about this. And like I said, when President Trump did this the first time, we saw revenue increase, and our reliance on Chinese goods on imports went from about 22% to 13%. That's a good thing for us as we try to bring these supply chains home. I would also point out, as he's announcing these tariffs, we've seen record investment from Apple, that wants to get out of China more meaningfully be in the United States. Mercedes-Benz now wants to produce here and not Mexico, and Honda, of course, yesterday. You didn't have that in your report. Honda announced that they're going to start building the hybrids in the United States of America as opposed to Mexico. So if you want to just sort of give one side of this, I don't know, maybe that's good for ratings. But if you had a more balanced approach, I think you would give President Trump a little bit of credit because it worked the first time.
Actually, I took live in my show the president side by side with the Taiwanese chip maker talking about $100 billion being invested in our country. So I'm very fair and I cover both sides of the story. Let's get back to the American consumer. Are you concerned that these tariffs are going to further drive up everyday costs for Americans?
It didn't the first time. Again, the best evidence here is what happened in President Trump's first term. When media types and ever were howling about tariffs then, prices went down because the overall economic policy was to drive domestic energy production and then sort of equalize this trade imbalance that happened. And so we didn't see inflation under President Trump's first term. We saw inflation under Joe Biden's term when he declared war on domestic energy production and had record spending. So that didn't work. So President Trump's going back to the playbook that worked the first time. And again, if you look at this in a vacuum, you can draw your own conclusion. But if we actually have robust energy production, we have real permitting reform, I think our economy is going to boom.
Senator, one more question, something dear to your heart, dear to my heart. Secretary of Education Linda McMahon has now been tasked to eliminate the Department of Education. Special ed is about to get slashed. Listen to what one Texas father of 2 boys with special needs told me recently.
I believe that with the loss of funding, it would be very devastating to my boys, to all their parents that are dealing with the need for the resources for special education. I have a son who's an aspiring doctor, so Title I and amongst other programs, help him receive those Pell Grants and things like that so that he can move forward with his academic career and hopefully become a
thriving citizen. It was the end of that soundbite. Senator, I know you have a son with special needs. I grew up in a family with siblings that have special needs, parents that were teachers in this community. What do you say to parents who are really scared about their kids' futures?
Yeah, I guess my message would be don't believe media reports like you're promoting right now. It's not true. There's the IDEA, which is a federal statute that guarantees those services. And so whether that money then is going to flow directly to the states or in different agencies, the law is the law. There are protections. That funding is going to continue to flow. But what you won't see is the Department of Education denying grant applications to school districts across this country because they haven't implemented divisive DEI trainings and divide the room by race. And so the Department of Education is essentially a conduit for federal funds that are going to continue to flow to states and important programs benefiting those with special needs. So I think a little bit of truthfulness here as opposed to scaring the daylights out of folks who are in vulnerable positions would be appropriate.
Well, I think a lot of people are scared right now. They're losing jobs.
Well, if they watch your report, if they watch your report about it, they might be, but the facts just don't support that.
Well, I appreciate your side. Senator Eric Schmitt, thank you.